Now we're going to do the Phil Collins test. For today's video, we're going to be testing OpenAI's GPT-5.2 Pro model. Now, this is of course a special variation of the GPT-5.2 family intended to basically just be as smart as possible. Now, I did see some IQ test result that came out with a bunch of different models on it, and hypothetically, if we were to go off that one single benchmark.jpg, this did score higher than all of the other models on there. I think it was like scoring 145 or 147 on the Mensa Norway test that they showed. So obviously take that with a grain of salt, but the whole purpose of mentioning that is that this is an extremely intelligent model. And if we are to look at the simple bit of information we have about it here, the price definitely reflects that form of intelligence, being that the input and output price here per million tokens is extremely steep. Regardless of that, there's not really a whole lot to say in terms of a preamble for testing this model. It's going to take a very long time to film this video, as in some of my testing with the previous 5.1 Pro mode, some of the answers would take like 30 to 40 minutes to generate, even for silly tests like a browser operating system. So with that, we're basically going to hop right into it right now. And something I note that I have not previously seen with the Pro models is there is now a selectable thinking time option here. Previously, I don't recall ever having seen this for the Pro model, but being that I know sometimes folks just want to see the model tested in its full capability, I am going to opt to keep this on extended thinking for every test we run here, even though that may take significantly longer. Regardless of that, we're going to hop right in and do the tried and true browser operating system test. So feel free to subscribe. But yeah, all right. I, of course, do also have some other kind of more complicated tasks that are designed to really test the intelligence and capability of this model. However, I always like starting with this, as it's quite fun to actually look at the results together. So in only a little under 14 minutes, and I say only speaking relatively to how long this could have potentially taken, we have our results. So really, I'm not even going to look through anything here. Let's just go ahead and take a peek at it, as I am quite eager. Okay, and that's 2,442 lines of code, so still fairly robust in length. The previous 5.1 test that I did generated a script that was around 6,500 lines of code, which was quite impressive. All right, another Nebula OS, and I will say this is almost a carbon copy of what I saw with ChatGPT 5.1 Pro, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Nebula OS is an odd thing, as both Gemini DeepThink and ChatGPT 5.1 Pro did name them the same thing, which was Nebula OS when I did a head-to-head, so it was interesting. It does open with a little welcome.txt, just instructing us a bit about this operating system. So we'll close that and just test some of the basic functionality. First and foremost, to test attention to detail, let's see if the right-click functionality is enabled. Okay, it is not, which is scaring me because sometimes it is possible that it does go ahead and actually implement that, but something may be amiss. There is a clock in the bottom right. Let's just check our start menu. Okay, terminal. Interesting icon for the terminal. It just did give us a brain. We have an about, and we have a bunch of different applications here, which are also listed here. There is additionally a search functionality, so let's see if I type terminal. It does actually properly search, so that's pretty cool. And I suppose we'll take a look at terminal first and foremost. Help. I would have liked to have seen some green text were I to really nitpick, but overall, I mean, this is nice. We can switch the theme from within terminal. Theme, light. That's $200 a month worthy. No, I'm like, 50-50. All right, date. Okay, that is correct. Let's see if it has that infuriating snap feature. Okay, no, I'm not seeing that, but you can double click to minimize and then unminimize, or maximize and then minimize. All right, let's check our settings. Don't. Okay, so it's possible these icons don't work. We'll just check them from in here where they do work. And that does work. So this really is just like a carbon copy of the 5.1 result almost, where when you do change the accent color, it is most prominently shown here in this little dot next to the start bar. So we'll just change it to a nice teal aqua-ish color. We can reset, and then changing the theme, of course, which we saw through the terminal. Let's move on. Our Notes app, I do believe we had open when we first opened this application. So auto saves to local storage. Very good. Still no snap or whatever feature, which is fine. The only reason I look for that is because 5.1 Pro did do that. All right, we have our abacus calculator. This is absolutely weird. I've never seen a calculator done this way in one of these results. Okay, 58 times 5, 290. Good. Divided by 5, 58. Oh, cool. Divided by 5. All right, well, interesting. I've not ever seen that before. Normally they have buttons corresponding to the numbers, but regardless, that's pretty cool. File system, we have some fake files, new folder, folder name, subscribe. And it did actually make the folder, and it put things in it. New file. This is actually some fairly impressive level of complexity. We could make a new folder, then we actually were able to make a text file from within the folder and actually open it in the text browser and write in it, which would be saved to local storage. Overall, the features here are somewhat impressive. We have, let me see, oh, our browser. So really one of the things that will work here, of course, is wikipedia.org. Oh, okay, well, I typed it in all caps, but that's okay. So this is pretty cool. And then if you actually want to see more about me on Wikipedia, okay, well, it's a decent looking browser. I'm going to have to go and make myself a Wikipedia page. I'll have Claude write it. Solid result. I would have liked to have seen right click working. However, we cannot discount the fact that something may be amiss here. I will quickly take a look in the developer tools section. Okay, I don't see any errors. Perhaps that is a feature that just was not implemented. Regardless of that, now with the simple test out of the way, it's time to really put this model hardcore to the test and see what it's capable of. Now for this next test, because this does take a while, I'm going to actually start it and then we'll take a quick peek at the prompt and what exactly we're expecting to get right here. This is going to be a virtual web-based drum kit simulation inspired by, if you're familiar with it, the Logic Pro X, which is a music software from Apple, virtual drum kit, which actually has a really cool aesthetic graphic of a drum set, and then you can actually play it using the keyboard, or you can click on the individual pieces of the drum. It is just really cool, or maybe it's the iPad GarageBand one, I don't know. I do get them confused sometimes. Regardless of that, this is basically supposed to go ahead and make a web-based, aesthetically pleasing virtual drum set that we can then play with the keyboard. And obviously these sounds will need to be corresponding to the specific type of drum or cymbal that is placed in this simulation. So regardless, I'm going to be pretty interested in seeing this. I have not done any kind of sound related tests with these models in quite a while. Before, I have tested some using like basically online music software and stuff like that, and some of the results we got were pretty cool, but this is not something I've done in a few months, so I'll be interested to see 1, how this looks, 2, how it sounds, and 3, how it works. All right, in 24.5 minutes, we have our result right here, as well as a download link. Okay, well, I suppose that works too. And it gives us a little bit of information about the key map in terms of what keys to press to play which piece of the drum. First, we'll take a look at it aesthetically, and then we can worry about all that. I suppose it wouldn't be that complicated, assuming it were to actually work. We've received some console errors here. I am just going to paste them back into the model right here and say I'm getting these errors, fix them. And I'm just telling it like nothing actually showed up either and no sound appears to be working. We now hypothetically have a fixed version of this. Okay, we do definitely have a fixed version of this. I'm going to say this at first glance may not look very impressive just based on how like the drum is a little wonky. I have tried this specific test or something akin to it many months ago with models, and they did a disastrous job of it. There would have been no hope to actually draw 3D assets like this in a relatively decent regard. So with that, let's just go ahead now and okay, I only have my laptop speakers hooked up right now, which are complete garbage, but I do have an external speaker, so I will plug this in and we'll try. All right. Now I got to learn how to play this. I thought the cymbals were invisible, but it seems to be just a really dark lighting issue. God. Because they're visible in the correct, that was like painful. All right, so snare. Let's just do a simple, we'll do a closed hi-hat, we'll do a bass drum. Oh yeah. This is pretty good. Look at the hover effects too. Now we're going to do the Phil Collins test. So, all right, overall, this is actually quite well done. Something I would like to make specific note of is this thing right here. So the hi-hat, when we actually click that, you can see the animation of how it would actually close in real life. There we go. So it's so frustrating because the lighting here really lets this down, because I feel this may be visually more impressive than we see with this horrendously dark situation. But when we actually pivot this camera to a place where the symbols are visible, this is quite well done. So I'm going to say I'm impressed. Even notice like the actual lighting gradient, if you will, on the drum heads. That's kind of cool. They're not just a solid color. For this next test, you may be familiar with the flight combat simulator test that we've done, but I am going to change it up a bit and we're going to do a ship combat simulator game. Ideally, this would generate something with low poly graphics that is reminiscent of kind of like old ship battles where they used cannons and things like that. I'm just very interested to see graphically how this goes about putting this together. So we finally have our result here, and hopefully if it is a good result, the customer satisfaction across different surveys will in fact go up. It's a relatively short script, well, only around 1,500 lines or so, and it does also say you need to just run it like in this regard, so we're just going to do as it tells us. Unfortunately, we basically get the same error that we got with the drum set, at least in terms of nothing is actually visually appearing on the screen. So I have simply, just as we did before, pasted the developer tool console into this, and then I didn't even say anything. It will understand enough to know that it needs to go ahead and fix this, as I am quite interested to see how it goes about doing this. I suppose for like a side note, completely unrelated, I'm taking apart this Lenovo. I did just go and buy like the cheapest gaming laptop I could find at Micro Center, because I want to build a custom retro case for it. So I'm like cannibalizing this thing and trying not to destroy the screen as I wait for these results to happen. But then hypothetically, if I do take this apart without destroying it, I'll be able to custom print like a 3D like retro style case for it with modern hardware, which I'm quite excited about. So, all right, yeah, well, we'll see what happens here. All right, so it did make me make the changes manually. So, all right, I think I don't actually, whoa, okay. I'm having a little trouble here figuring out exactly what the heck is going on, but how do I fire? So this is my ship. Okay, those are the cannons. Oh, I think this jank thing next to me is the reflection on the water. That would, that would make a lot more sense. All right, mouse is to aim, space is to click or to fire. Oh, okay, you know what? So look at the way, I'm going to pick up on a couple of things. The trail, the wake, which would be the correct terminology, that the ships are making is pretty cool. And when they turn, and the ship sinks when it gets destroyed. This is actually kind of cool. It took me a little while to actually understand exactly what I was looking at here. I thought this was a weird artifact, but that's actually the reflection of the ship on the water. So actually a more interesting feature. I'm going to now press restart. The ship does sink when it gets hit. So, okay, we should, in theory, I still am having trouble figuring out how to, oh, so I can't shoot while I'm moving, it seems like. And then I think the mouse cursor, when we see that circle thing, I believe that's actually like where to aim. There's something of the sort. Look at the actual smoke effects and particle effects from the cannons when they fire. This is actually pretty difficult, but this is quite cool. I wish the water was like a little more color of water, but this requires, in my opinion, a little more work. So I've just given it some improvements that I would like to see, such as basically improved graphical fidelity overall. So I'm telling it to make these changes and then give me the entire updated script. I'm quite intrigued by this game. It's actually cool. And something I'll note about this that I did see with 5.1 when doing a flight combat simulator test is it's actually putting particle effects near where the impact of ammunition or the firing of ammunition happens, almost smoke effects, if you will. So that's kind of cool to see and not something I've commonly seen before. So it's telling me that I need to press the update button and it will go ahead and implement these changes. Now, the problem here, at least in my opinion, is that there is no button. So I've just told it, hey, there is no update button, so can you please just go ahead and generate the changes? And now the update button has appeared. I'm just going to click it. It's given us the response by starting out with an apology, which is very good. It should be apologizing for its incompetence. I'm like 33% kidding there. So basically it just gave us the entire updated script. All I'm going to do is just go in here and replace it. And then theoretically, because the server is running, we should just be able to go ahead and refresh the page once the new script is in place and get our newly updated graphical fidelity version. Now I noticed there's about 700 or so, I think, lines of code more, maybe 500, don't quote me on that specific figure. Definite improvement. Now, unfortunately, the shadow, oh geez, in this ship, oh no, that's way better. So, okay, I don't think we can go that way. In some ways, this is better. In some ways, it isn't. This really, no, I have to say, the movement of the ships as well on water, it did a good job paying attention to how they would actually kind of slowly turn around and things like that. This is difficult to judge, but it is really quite cool. I almost have to think maybe the previous version was a bit better, unless that's a boundary and we're not supposed to go in there, but the problem is the opponent ship is going in there, so I don't know that this is an overall improvement. The ship model is more impressive. And yeah, all right, I think I'm going to move on to the next test, although to be honest with you, I think I may regret actually having it. So we have port and starboard reload as well. So basically that would be the port side. I think, don't quote me on that, I don't know. And then that's the starboard side. So we have to wait to shoot again to actually reload those as well. This is really cool. It's just so frustrating. The color issue is still not the best. Something I've noticed with the GPTs is, at least in terms of this style of testing, they seem to not have a great grasp on like what constitutes visible and what constitutes very difficult to see in terms of darkness, as seen again here, as well as in the Nebula OS to some extent. So that is just something I've kind of noticed with the whole 5 family ever since the introduction of 5 even. I'm now going to try the C++ retro racing game. This is a test that to date I have not really ever gotten a proper result from. A lot of the models have done it in varying levels of success, but there's nothing really so far in this test that has really properly adhered to what I want, which is just like a decent retro low poly rally style game. So we'll keep this as a hard level test and see how this does. Here is hypothetically going to give us the fixed version of that game. It was not necessarily, those are just warnings, so we should hopefully still fingers crossed be good. It wasn't necessarily a huge issue, so it's just kind of frustrating. I've noticed just in this short bit of testing we've been doing, it seems like this needs 2 tries to really make properly functioning results, which is a bit frustrating. Even if the end result is ultimately rather impressive, I just kind of wish there was a bit more competence, at least on first try. Okay, so here we have our rally light. Enter to confirm. WS. So this is so frustrating because I know this is going to sound weird. This may arguably be the best actual result we've received in terms of what I'm seeing here with the way the track is laid out and the actual, like, there's signs on the ground, there are trees, the way the track is swooping and stuff. It has elevation changes. It looks really cool. I did also see a steering wheel that actually kind of showed us it moving. The big problem here is that the colors, and I mean, it's, well, you see the big problem is impossible to see. We're now going to try the 3D printer simulation, but some folks had pointed out that it would be a bit cooler if I actually, instead of just had it make specific shapes, told it to make actual 3D objects. So I have just changed this to make a cube, ball, and rod in terms of what this will actually simulate printing. Being that those should all be closed shapes, it may be more interesting and show us a better example of how this would go about emulating a 3D printer. All right, here is our 3D printer simulation result. And again, I'm just going to fix this myself because I really don't want to wait another 15 minutes for this to go ahead and, you know. All right, I'm seeing some interesting things here. Most notably, I believe there does seem to be a filament tube actually coming out of the top of the extruder, which is pretty cool. We do have some funky gantry lines and things like that. It seems things may not be specifically shaped properly. Again, it is quite dark, but regardless of that, we're going to try to have it print a cube now, and we'll see how it handles actually printing a solid shape. Okay, yeah, that's first and foremost. It did a nozzle purge line. All right. It's so darn frustrating because, like, it's so incompetent in one regard, but then in the other regard, it's fantastic. So this is almost like a very intelligent, creative person who is unreliable. It's impressive what we're seeing here. I do wish I could, okay, there. Yeah, I mean, look at this. Okay, so the nozzle is even drawn with like a brass material. It may not be necessarily pointed in the correct orientation, but still, this is truly going layer by layer to build this cube. We have like some crosshatch infill. We're only at 1%. It's saying this is going to take 55 minutes. It will simulate a proper 55-minute print here. I have half a mind to just let it run through it and time lapse it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm tempted, but this video's already been like ongoing for like 3.5, 4 hours now. So let's just speed it up and see what it would look like at a, wow. Oh, okay. Yeah, I just kind of want to see what it does on the top. If it actually properly fills in the cube as it would. You know what? Let's just do this. Let's get to like that last layer. Okay, well that is done, and it did not fill in the top of the cube, but it made a cube. That's kind of cool. All right, this will be more difficult. The ball will be difficult. It is doing it. I can tell the way it's going wider outside to make like an actual ball. This is fairly impressive. I love how it draws the purge line. And again, this just goes back to like the frustration where it's so good in some ways and then it's just so frustratingly bad in some ways. So, I mean, now my assumption here is it's probably not going to completely close the ball shape on the top. It will probably just kind of mirror where it started this on the bottom, which was maybe like 20% up the height of the ball. All right, let's just fast forward. And it did. I'm going to eat my words on that one. That's quite good. That is really quite good. That is a solid result. Get it? Because it's solid. Oh. All right. And finally, we'll try the rod. All right, and it left it open like it did with the square or the cube. Overall, this was kind of a cool result. I love the way it drew a purge line beforehand. That is not something I've seen at all, ever. And I think the most impressive portion here was definitely the ball and the way it actually closed it and filled it in. And then when you actually zoom in on it from the top, you see the individual layer lines it's drawn, which is kind of cool, even when you look through a little and see the infill. So overall, this was quite interesting, though it did need some manual tending to. This test is almost more creativity focused, as I've told it that I'm starting a Kickstarter campaign for a tabletop game called 1Z-X7-Dead, something I completely just made up and have no idea about, but I basically told it I have this name trademarked, I need you to go ahead and come up with everything else, I have no idea what the game will be or anything of that sort, and then I've asked it to make something that runs in the web as a taste of this game that is intuitive for casuals to be able to go and understand what the whole campaign will be about and how this tabletop game will actually be played. So it'll be kind of interesting, and think of this almost more as a test of its creativity and thinking capabilities, as it is designated with actually coming up with this entire game from scratch when just given this weirdly like cryptic game title. So I'm very interested to see how this goes and uses this title to guide itself to come up with an idea in terms of the relation between the end result in this title. Okay, so our elevator pitch, this is a cooperative survival thriller where every action is a trade. Move quietly and risk running out of time, or act fast and make noise that spawns the dead. Here's our premise and lore hook. You're trapped inside a sealed containment wing after a bio incident. The facility's failsafe AI has initiated a wipe protocol. 1Z equals restricted access clearance, X7 equals the specimen that caused the breach, and then DEAD, the facility's purge, upload, decontamination, evaluation, asset denial. You can define the acronym to your taste. No, I think we'll stick with that one, thank you. The mission is simple to understand and brutal to execute. Get in, get the card, get the sample, upload the purge, and get out. Here's player count, time, feel. 1 to 4 players, 30 to 60 minutes. Complexity is easy to learn but high tension. The vibe is claustrophobic, cinematic, and one more turn pressure. Here's the core mechanic that makes it, whatever the name is. The noise attracts death system. In most zombie games, fighting is in the main loop. In this one, the main loop is do I do the safe thing or the loud thing? Players get small number of actions, but powerful choices often increase the noise or threat. Noise directly increases how many infected spawn, how quickly they find you, and how hard it is to stabilize. This creates a clean, intuitive tension curve that non-gamers understand instantly. Alright, there's a lot of additional stuff here, but really I think we got the core concept of this game, which is kind of interesting. So let's just go ahead and we'll download it gave me a zip file, but it said, or just a single HTML file. Alright, let's go ahead and take a peek at 1ZX7 dead. Very interesting. Okay, so here's a demo prototype. This is a tiny vertical slice of the tabletop game. A 10 scavenger run. Okay, now I'm looking for intuitive instructions here, so someone, a casual as myself, would be able to understand what to do. All right, so I need to get this key card, which is right here, retrieve the specimen, which is signified by this little icon right here. I can zoom in a bit. Upload at the dead terminal, which is down there, and then exit. Okay. Click adjacent tiles to move, click adjacent zombies to attack. Okay, I think I can go here or here. Should probably go right there. So it spawns more of these zombies each time we move. Okay, I'm starting to somewhat understand the point here. Now, based on the fact that these steps are labeled, I think the first thing we need to do is get this key card, although I don't know where exactly it has gone. Oh, this is going to take a while. I'm going to time lapse this. I think we're going to lose, but that's all right. I can't move now. Oh, great, I died. I'm not really someone who's into stuff like this. I can appreciate that it made an interesting game that seemingly some folks may have some interest in. Truthfully, this frustrates me to no extent. I think this is going to conclude this video game test portion or tabletop test portion, as it did go ahead and do what I asked it, where it created a simple web taste demo, as well as the actual game and logic and things of that sort, keeping in mind that this was specified as a tabletop game that just needed a simple web demo component for people to actually get a feel for what the game would be like. So I think this does actually do that. I know I did just quickly switch gears, but the board game stuff just makes me angry. So I'm going to give it this photo right here of myself with the Honda Beat and say create the most faithful to this image SVG representation you can, or something of that sort. A simple query, and we'll go ahead and see. Sometimes, more often than not, the SVG results are generally pretty hilarious, so I'm interested to see what this actually comes up with here. I would have to make the argument that this may have been the most accurate way to adhere to my prompt, which is basically just putting the image in an SVG, as it said. We're going to try that one more time, just saying create an SVG that looks as similar to this image as possible without just embedding the source image into an SVG, which would just give us that, which is... Wow, okay. This is one I'm going to need to ask the audience. It gave me two different things. It gave me this and this. I'm not 100% sure what I was expecting or what it was expecting I was expecting, but regardless, this is what we received as an output, which is kind of interesting, though, again, I genuinely need someone with more knowledge about, like, whatever the heck this is supposed to be to tell me if this did a good job or not. So that's going to conclude this video testing ChatGPT 5.2 Pro. Overall, I'm going to echo a sentiment I shared previously in this video at some point, where it's very, very smart, but it seems inconsistent in terms of how well it produces functional results. Sometimes it would do stupid things like miss out the import map or leave that out in the 3D printer simulation here. But then once we went ahead and fixed that relatively simple issue, it came up with something extremely impressive where it was even drawing a purge line. It did go ahead and close the shape here where you can even look through in some of these layer gaps and see the infill that it drew. The game test here was something more for its creativity and perhaps not necessarily something in my wheelhouse, but I know folks may have an interest in seeing things like this, and I want to kind of accommodate different styles of things. I think something that really stood out to me the most impressive was definitely the ship combat simulation game. Just the way the ships actually move in the water, they have a wake, the way that the ammunition is actually, I didn't even see this before. I'm seeing these cannons actually move as the mouse goes up and down. So it seems like we can almost like aim them in different directions. The way the ships actually move back and forth or sway when they get hit by the ammunition, the smoke effects, the effects when the ammunition actually hits the ship as well. It's just really quite impressive here. Unfortunately, this was the second try result where we had told it to go ahead and enhance the graphics of this game, which arguably made for a less playable game, which was a little unfortunate, but overall this was a really, really impressive result that I very much liked seeing. Beyond that, the drum kit was pretty cool, and again, this is something I had tried many, many months ago, and no model really did it. I don't recall what specific models I had tried this with, but this is a significant leap forward in what we see here. It drew the drums really nicely. The hover effects, not hover effects, but the outline effects on them when you click them were rather impressive, and it was just cool. But again, this was another result that did not work on first try and needed a second chance to actually show something functional. And then beyond that, we did a few other things, mainly the browser OS, which was, in my honest opinion now, looking back in retrospect, somewhat mid, but it is what it is. And again, though, this was quite cool. And the C++ Rally game showed a large amount of potential, but unfortunately, again, it wasn't quite perfect, though it was probably one of the better potential ones that I have seen from a model. So that is going to conclude our first look and test of ChatGPT 5.2 Pro. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.